First and foremost, I'd like to just start by wishing you all a very happy Thursday. Hope you're having a great day so far. Thanks for taking the next 45 to 50 minutes here with me today to join us for our June Accelerate Series webinar. Today's topic is all about navigating loss of life target maps within Asset Map. So our goal today is to have you leave today's training feeling a little bit more comfortable leveraging our loss of life target maps, whether that's just to illustrate need. What you come up with in terms of your recommendations, of course, is strictly up to you. The few recommendations that I will be peppering into my hypothetical scenario are just that. They are hypothetical, so quick disclaimer there. In no way am I suggesting that you recommend the hypothetical policies and things that I may be implementing in today's training, okay? So quick disclaimer. Now, one of the first things that people tend to ask is this being recorded? Yes, it is. I do my very best to get the recording sent out later this afternoon, if not first thing in the morning. If you're an enterprise client, for some of my enterprise clients, I am required to get the recordings approved for you. So if you don't get an email later today, that just means that I have to get that submitted and approved, and then you can go ahead and request it, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start by introducing myself. My name is LiaJean McHenry. I'm our Senior Manager of Customer Success here at Asset Map. Been at Asset Map now for a little over 5 years, getting, I guess, probably like 5 years and a handful of months at this point. Prior to that, I used to work for a company called eMoney Advisor. So in total, I've been working in the fintech space for the last decade. I do feel like I have a pretty good tap on the pulse of what's working for people and what's not. That being said, just know that I do strive to always make sure that you're getting the most out of these trainings. I may ask you to interact with me with a poll or through the chat. I'll just ask that you do that. This is the way that I can assist you and best help you moving forward. Speaking of the chat, if you have questions, that's the best place to submit them all throughout today's session. If you have questions, submit them in the chat and we will go ahead and get them answered from there. This will be our agenda, otherwise known as our success plan of what we're going to be walking through together today. Our focus today is on the loss of life target maps. I will take you through a full overview of how those work, the logic, the math, the structure. We'll go over some best practices to consider. I will show a quick example of like how to layer in a recommendation. Again, it will be a hypothetical recommendation, okay? And I'll show you how to leverage cloning and renaming target maps to set yourself up for success so that if you're trying to build out multiple scenarios, you will have the flexibility to do that. All throughout our training today, I will point out some additional support and resources that you can count on. And of course, you can reach out to our support team and I'll cover the ways to do that as we go through. If you have questions, you can add them in the chat. If it's applicable to the group, I will get them answered on today's call. If it's slightly too case specific or off topic, I will ask that we table that and ask that you please reach out to the support team. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started in app. This is where we'll spend the majority of our time today is in the application. Before I begin in talking about a loss of life target map, why don't I show you some innovative ways to potentially look for a loss of life opportunity. Did you know that when you click into your household index list, this is your list of households added into the application. As you start to add more and more households and add more and more data, all of that will flow through to your household index list. Now, while this is an area that you will never put in front of a client because it would show other clients' information, it is an area that you will be leveraging behind the scenes. Many people often forget that we do have some data entry insights up along the top. These that you're seeing on my screen, these are the defaults. In the columns dropdown, however, there is an expansive list of all these different data entry insights that you can pick and choose from, so you can change the insights that might be of most interest to you. People also forget that you can also use the column search along the top. In today's example, I want to show you some filters that I like to use when I'm potentially looking for a loss of life opportunity. And for some of you, you might say, well, when would I use this? You know, maybe if you're looking for an opportunity to sell insurance or something like that. Obviously, a loss of life does not directly correlate that you like have to recommend insurance. There's a lot of products and things that are out there, right? A loss of life is to illustrate, is there a need? Yes or no? And if there is a gap and there is a need, what are we going to do to fix it? That's on you. That's on you to determine. That's on you to figure out. And then you can layer in your recommendations. Today's example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to deselect some of these pre-templated columns. And I'm actually going to add a couple that are of most interest to me. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use the search bar up at the top in the columns, and I'm going to type in the word earn, and I'm going to add in the income earned column, okay? Because whenever I'm looking for a loss of life, one thing I know to be true is if you got a lot of earned income, but you have less than maybe X in insurance, and you got some dependents, and you got some liabilities, like, yeah, it might be worth me taking a look, like, do you have enough insurance, right? Or is there a loss of life potential gap? And if there is, like, are there other products that I could recommend? A few of my other favorites are if I start typing in the word death. I know, morbid, but that's the fastest way to get here. If you type in death, you can go ahead and click insurance death benefit. Okay, and then the next one I like to type in is dependent. I just start typing these keywords in and it finds it for me. You can do the same thing, type in a keyword. If you don't see it listed, it just means we may not have that as a column selection. The final one I want to add is liabilities amount. Now that I've added these columns, okay, that's all well and good. I can comb through this list one by one, but frankly, let's be honest, who has time for that? And if you look down here on the bottom left, you can see I have almost 260 households in Asset Map. So is that my only option? No, you can take this a step further by applying filters. If you click filter, this allows you to come in and you can select the column filter. The column filter is going to be the exact same column lists, but you can now put parameters. So what I might do here is I'll type in earned income and I say, listen, I only want to see households that have more than $200,000 of earned income. Next, I want to look at insurance death benefit amount. Show me households that have less than $2 million of life insurance. Okay, great. After that, did I do too many zeros here? I think I did one too many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, say it, one too many, not 20 million. Okay. Column filter next. I'm going to go start typing independent. I want to see households that have greater than or equal to 1. Finally, I want to look at liabilities amount, and I want to look at households that have, let's say, more than $100,000 of liabilities outstanding. If I click apply filter, it does the work for me, and it lets me know that 7 out of those 260 households match this filtering criteria. And what do you know? I happen to be meeting with these people a week from tomorrow, so maybe that's going to be the first opportunity that I dive into today. Now, for those of you that are on our elite level subscription, don't forget that you can also leverage Signals Plus. Signals Plus allows you to look at signals across all of your households. If you don't see this feature in your access, this might mean that it's due to your subscription level. It could also be that you're an enterprise client. Okay, so if you don't see that, there's a reason why you don't see it. So just quick disclaimer there for the group. Now, before I flip to that, let's say that we took the time, we really took the time to find these filters, to find these columns. We should save them. If you like what you've done, you should save it so that you can use these filters and column selections 6 months from now when you have like 40 more households added into Asset Map. So if someone does the work, right, one of you goes in, you find a filter selection, you find a column selection you like, well, 6 months from now, you might forget what you used and you might really like it. So what I recommend doing is have your column selection along the top, have your filter selection, click save, and then click save as. If you click save as, you're going to give this a name, and I might call this life insurance. Okay, great. If you do that, you can go to click save. If you click save, that's going to flow through here into your layouts drop down as an option that you can flip to at a later date. Now, the data in your household index list is always updating based on when you update information within a household. So if you're going into household asset maps and making updates to their data, it's going to flow through and update into the household index list as well. Now, that Signals Plus view looks something like this. So that allows you to select that Signals Plus view, look at all the signals across the board. Even with this view, you can select the columns drop down and you can isolate down to the specific signals you want. You could overlay. I actually already created another one including my signal. So I have this one called Life Insurance Opportunity where I added the loss of life column for the signal. And sure enough, this kind of supports what I'm thinking, which is you got a lot of earned income. You may not have enough insurance. You got a lot of liabilities and you have people that are counting on you, right? Does that mean that we may have a problem? Now, this is not a perfect solve, ladies and gentlemen. Where we go to run the numbers is always going to be here within the asset map household itself, specifically in target maps. Target maps are where we mathematically quantify and prove to people, are you on track, yes or no? And if you're not on track, what are we going to do together to move the needle in the right direction? Now, today's training is not to fully teach you the ins and outs of how all target maps work. However, I will do my best to provide you a solid overview as I take you through the loss of life target map in case you're new and in case you're looking for some exposure. For those of you that after today's call, you feel like, you know what, I need some more training on target maps, lucky for you, we offer Signals target map training twice a week. I'm posting the link in the chat now. This is a training we offer twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. It's the same training, same material, just offered 2 separate dates, okay, 2 separate times. Rather, it's the same time, 3 p.m. Eastern, but on Tuesdays and or Thursdays, okay? So if you're somebody who's like, I really need to be able to explore this a little bit deeper, I want to see some retirement examples, I want to see some education examples, then come to that training. The next step after that is really like you need to be in a case working on it and build one out yourself. And reach out to the support team when you have questions. Okay. Now, hopping into this household, if I click back into this household Signals, okay, this is another place where for those of you that maybe don't have access to Signals Plus, if you're using that drop down view, so check this out. If I go back to my household index list, it defaults back to the original view. If I go back here, here's the one we created together today. Okay, life insurance is what I called it. These were the columns, these were the filters. Now, if you don't have access to Signals Plus, it's perfectly fine because guess what? You say, you know what? I'm going to be meeting with this household later today. I wonder what their loss of life signal looks like. You just click into the household, go right to the signal, and sure enough, it's red. You can click into the details tab of the signal. It'll tell you what that signal is based upon. It'll even give you some considerations. Now, this is not a Signals training, but if you're unfamiliar with Signals, Signals has a predictive model built into the back end. What it does is it looks at every household's asset map. The primary client, the spouse, their ages, their incomes, their assets. And it spits out at the highest level based off of some industry standard algorithms we have in the back end. Those are proprietary. We don't share those with users. Okay, but here's the thing, Signals is not a perfect solve. So we're not going to share the math with you because we don't want you to get stuck on the math. It's not a perfect solve anyway. What this is an indication. It gives you permission to go run the numbers whether or not someone's asking you to. Now, Signals does run off of a color gradation system, green, yellow, and red. Green indicates it appears that if something like this took place, there may be funding we could pull from. That funding may or may not be enough. Yellow indicates there appears to be some funding, probably not enough. Red indicates whether or not there's funding, it's not looking so good, right? So just because something's green doesn't mean that there's not a problem, okay? Like long-term care, for example, this signal is green, but if you come to this asset map, they don't have any long-term care insurance. Well, yeah, because the software is going to assume like, hey, if you have to, you'll liquidate and pull from your other assets. You'll self-fund long-term care if you have to. Does that mean we would recommend that? No. Now, as a reminder, you can view signals within every household here, but you can also be on the asset map itself, and digitally over on the right, you can expand your sidebar. Many of you might keep sidebar open all the time. I like to kind of tuck mine in and open it at my leisure. Okay, that being said, I do like to have it available so that I can open up signals, can see signals while looking at the asset map. And this is actually one of the only places with signals that you can click this show related financials tile, and it'll actually isolate what that signal is looking at on this household's asset map and taking into consideration. Again, we don't share the math, but for the first time ever, we're actually showing you some insight as to what specifically from this household's asset map that it's looking at. So for this loss of life, it's red. It is taking into account their current insurance. It's looking at their earned income, okay? And it's letting me know that there could be a problem. All right, well, now it's up to me to go do the math. So where am I going to do that? Over on the left, go into target maps. Within target maps, I'm going to click new target map on the upper right. Now, we're limited on time today, so I'm only going to run one loss of life scenario. With most of our target maps, when you go to run it, you're only running it for one person at a time. Loss of life is one of those. In real life, I have a primary client and a spouse. Technically, they're both my primary clients, right? Neil in the platform is the primary, Lauren in the platform is the spouse, but they're both my primary clients. I work with them very closely together. So in real life, I would run one for Neil and then I'd run another one for Lauren. But in today's example, we're just going to run one for Neil. Okay, and I'm going to click create. Now we give you 5 pre-templated target maps, meaning what? That means that there's some system default assumptions being factored in. Do you have to like our defaults? No. Am I going to lose sleep at night if you don't like them? No. Because guess what? It's a starting point and it's not a perfect solve. You're going to adjust this based on who you're running the numbers for. And at the end of the day, like, you absolutely have a right to adjust the assumptions if you feel like they should be adjusted. Okay. So I don't say that to be disrespectful in any regard. I say that because you have the flexibility to make changes if you need to. So anytime I run a target map, anyone that's attended training with me and I've given you training on target maps, you know the first thing I do. The first thing I do is I start in tab number 1. So target maps are comprised of 4 tabs. Tab number 1 is what do you want, which is what are we solving for? What's the expense of this goal, the expense of this need. Tab number 2 is what do you have to fund it? Tab number 3, what does this all mean? And tab number 4 is the cash flow details report. I like to start in tab number 1 because it's natural, right? We read books left to right, and don't come for me. I know that there are some books, you know, I know that there's some comic books and things that read right to left. I am aware of that, but I would say the majority of the time we're reading books left to right, right? So that's what I think of. And I start in tab number 1 and I work my way right, and I'm telling a story. Now, anytime I run a target map, I always switch the expected net return on capital to 0 to begin, because this percentage is used in 2 very distinct ways within every single target map that you run. Number 1, it's used as the discount rate to help us calculate present value equivalent. Number 2, it's used as the blended rate of return tied towards anything in tab number 2. So whenever I teach a target map, I like to start it at 0. We set our assumptions, and then I'll walk you through how to layer in your percentage, okay? Now, in tab number 1, this is what are we solving for? What's the expense? You can see that there's some defaulted assumptions already in here. Up top, you'll see that we're 12% funded in achieving this goal or this need as of today, based on these assumptions, okay? Now, out of this 12%, we're going to track that 12% in the funding bar. Now, this is percent funded, ladies and gentlemen. This is not Monte Carlo. Please do not get confused. AssetMap does not have Monte Carlo built in. I don't think you need it in this instance, okay? This is 12% funded. Out of that 12%, all 12% of that is coming from insurance. Okay, excellent. Okay, now this funding circle will track and change color based off of the percent funded. If it's less than 25%, it'll be red. It goes off quarters, okay? 0 to 25, it's red. 25 up to 50, it's orange. 50 up to 75, it's yellow. 75 and up will be green. Now, every time you click into tab number 1 of any target map, this is always after tax, cash flow desired. So after tax, expenses and or needs, okay? Now, in our industry, there's 2 prominent rules of thought for a loss of life analysis. There's human life valuation and lifestyle replacement. Our platform system default is lifestyle replacement. It's okay if you prefer to do human life valuation. If that's the case, you likely have a calculator that you're going to use. You're going to calculate that number. All you have to do is come in here. You basically just trash can all the expenses except for the top one. You click into the top one. You change this to be called like human life valuation. You put the number in there, and there you go. Got questions about it? You can reach out to the support team, but we're going to follow lifestyle replacement today. Starting with the first expense, our first defaulted expense is income replacement. The way we look at a loss of life is if this gentleman dies today, or as I like to say in a meeting, if you'd passed away yesterday, okay? I'm really weird about that. I think it's really odd to be sitting in front of someone and say if you died today, because if there's time left in the day, I mean, frankly, it is possible. I just don't like speaking things like that out into the universe. But then again, I have trauma, okay? My dad was killed by a drunk driver 3 years ago. Many of you, I think, know that. Many of you maybe don't. You know, it's like I FaceTimed my dad on my lunch break, and then I sent him a really funny TikTok video or something like that late at night, and he never responded to me. I thought it was weird. Well, he couldn't respond because he was dead. And, you know, I'm sorry if that makes you uncomfortable. That's just kind of how I choose to talk about it. I would never wish that for anyone. It's the worst thing that's ever happened in my life. But I'll tell you what, I really wish that we had had an asset map for my mom, because, you know, my dad handled a lot of that. High school sweethearts, they've been together 37 years, you know. She didn't know all the different, you know, things that he opted into through work in terms of like additional insurance. She didn't know all of that. And it was really scary for a minute. And we're all grieving, trying to figure out how we're going to move on with our lives. I don't think you even can move on, but you just find a way to push forward, right? It was really, really stressful. So I encourage you that Every single person that you work with deserves to have an asset map. And you know what? If it's not for them, it's for the people in their life. Because we always say here that there tends to be like one CFO of every family, right? One person that predominantly maybe runs a lot of the investment conversations and, like does a lot of the work with you. And that's all well and good. But at the end of the day, if something happens to that person, does the other person know it's there? Do the children know? Right? Like, there is something to be said, and the asset map is safe. It doesn't list account numbers and things like that. So even if someone's adult child looked at their parents' asset map, it's not like they can go take money from them or anything, right? So there is something to be said. Now let's go back into the loss of life. We're going to start back in tab number 1. We're assuming that this gentleman passes away today, and we're going to go look at that guy's asset map. We're going to add up all of his income, all of it, and take 70% of it, and that's what we're assuming we're replacing. Now, this gentleman's salary is about like $130,000, so I think 201 is a bit too high. I'm actually going to drop this down and just call it like 85, okay? No reason. I'm just choosing to put 85. If you would put something else, that's perfectly fine. I'm not trying to get too specific here, okay? You come up with the income replacement number you're comfortable with. If you override our default number, you need to come up here to the description and get rid of what's in the parentheses, okay? So this is saying $85,000 of income replacement every single year, starting today up until when this gentleman would have retired. And maybe for him, I'm going to say 65. But by the way, we're growing that by a 3% COLA. The COLA, think of this as like inflation, cost of living adjustment. It's just saying, I want to increase this expense every single year by 3%. That's what I want to do. If you don't want to, you drop it down. You want to increase it up, it's up to you. You click update. Next, transitional income. Not everyone speaks to this, but the idea is that for the first 3 years after this gentleman passes away, things might be more expensive. Why? His wife is overcome with grief. She has to take an extended leave from work. She's not collecting her full salary. Maybe they're remodeling their home and he's incredibly handy and was doing a lot of the work himself. And unfortunately, because he's passed away, now she would have to hire a general contractor to come complete the work. Right? Maybe you're like, you know what, I think I'd get in the weeds with this. I don't really want to use this. You could click into it. You could title this a different expense and add another expense in, or you could just come over to the right and you can remove it all together if you don't want it. Okay? It's up to you. Next, default is debt obligations. The idea here is that we go look at this household asset map, we add up all their liabilities, and we pay them off. You might say, I only want to pay the house off, or I would only pay like this off. Fine, up to you. You can adjust it. I'm going to leave it as is today. Next is final expenses. You pass away, your family wants to have a funeral, a memorial, right? Cremation, all that stuff, it costs money. If you think $10,000 is too low, you can increase it. Okay, all you have to do is come in here. If you're like, you know what, I prefer to make this 12 instead, fine, come right in there and you can override the default. If the household has any dependents, we do factor in education expense for each of the dependents, assuming that they go to college from the age of 18 till 22. Now, if we're like, that's not a primary focus for us right now because this child's only 11 years old and I know the grandparents would help, fine, you can remove it. It's up to you what you want to solve for. The final defaulted expense is emergency reserves. This is basically a one-time expense. The idea here is like, how much money would you want set aside in an emergency reserves account that like your spouse would be able to lean on, God forbid, if something was to happen, right? At this point, you're passed away. So would you want your wife to have an emergency reserves account in case, the water heater explodes or like a plumbing issue arise or something like that? Now, this defaulted number, it takes 50% of the household's annual income. So if the whole household has a lot of income, this number can tend to be pretty high. You might click in here and you might say, let me just start the conversation with like a $50,000 sleep at night number, and we'll ask them if that's reasonable. If that's the case, you can come in here and remove this text in the description. Okay? I just like to keep this clean and concise. We do put a placeholder for you for legacy and bequests. Nothing's filled out because it's up to you to populate it in. If you're like, I don't think I'm going to speak to that, you can trash can it right there. Now, this add desired cash flow button in every target map in tab number 1 lets you add additional expenses. So if there's other itemized expenses and things you want, you can add that in. I just helped an advisor the other day run a loss of life scenario for a client. The client has some racehorses currently, but they are hoping to sell them in the next couple years. But You know, as you can imagine, they cost a tremendous amount of money in terms of care. And God forbid, if something did happen to that gentleman, that expense would then fall on his wife, and she would have to be responsible for paying for that care. You know, I mean, obviously she'd still want to try to sell them, but you know, it's sometimes that can prove to be more difficult. So like that would be a perfect example of where I had him add like a custom desired expense, which is to add the cash flow, add that additional expense in there. Now, once you get your tab number 1 set up, this is what I like to show people. If this box is set to 0 and you are in tab number 1, and only if, but again, in any target map you run, if you're in tab number 1 and this is set to 0, we will take all these expenses, what they're worth today, inflate them by any COLA starting today throughout any time period, and this will be your total future value. So this loss of life analysis is going to cost $2.4 million if these expenses are reasonable and are in fact the things that they want to solve for. Now, what we can do is we can come to tab number 2. Tab number 2 is the what you have tab. Everything in tab number 2 is fed from the asset map report. So as you add cash flow sources and add assets and add insurance, those will flow through to the target map as well. Up to you to check on what should or should not be included as funding, okay? Cash flow sources up at the top, assets in the middle, insurance at the bottom. You'll notice that in this particular loss of life analysis, all 33% funding we have so far, if you hover over the bar, it tells you it's being funded from insurance. You'll also know because we break down the funding bar type by color. So if it's dark blue, that's insurance. If it's bright teal, it's cash flow income sources. If it's green, it's assets. So the only thing we have checked on are the 2 insurance benefits for this person. Now, those insurance benefits in total equal $800,000. In real life, you could come to tab number 2. You could factor in cash flow sources that the spouse would use to offset some of these expenses. You might check on some assets that could in fact be used. I'm not going to do that in today's scenario though, because in many cases, a lot of those assets and things do tend to be earmarked for other things. And we're not even looking at retirement. We're not. And I've had people debate me on that before. They're like, well, wait a second. In tab number 1, you're not even factoring in retirement. I'm like, yeah, but like, why are you even worried about retirement? If we can't even get this person's family comfortably leading up to retirement, then like we have a much bigger problem at hand, right? If you unexpectedly pass away today and your family cannot make do without you and the resources that we have available right now, then we have a much bigger problem than even talking about what retirement's going to look like later on. So what I'm going to do in today's analysis is I'm just going to leave only those insurance accounts checked on, and I'm going to come to tab number 3. This is the what it means tab, okay? Assuming that these are the expenses we're solving for, these expenses as of today, okay, or rather in total, are going to cost $2.4 million. Your current insurance covers $800,000 of that. That leaves us with a $1.6 million deficit. Okay, so what does this mean? Neil, if you prematurely pass away and these expenses are what you're solving for, your wife's going to have to come up with $1.6 million. But let's talk about something for a second. We're assuming that your money gets no rate of return. And in reality, if this $800,000 did pay out, right, probably not all of it's going to be used in the first year. And so we might want to roll the rest of whatever's left over into some type of investment account or something that might earn some level of return. You know where I like to check that is the cash flow details report. This will become your best friend for checking your work. In the cash flow details report, capital required is tab number 1. So there's those expenses. Capital available is tab number 2. You can see the only thing being taken into consideration is the 2 insurance policies. So look, in this first year, we have immediate expense. If we net those immediate expenses out against the $800,000, we have $519,000 left over. How we look at target maps is whatever's left over gets dumped into a bucket. Now, you can pick a blended rate of return to grow that bucket by. And maybe I say, okay, we're going to earn 5% on that money. Okay, well, guess what? If your money earns 5%, we're almost 50% funded. And by the way, you don't have a $2.4 million need today. You only have 1.6. Why? Because I told you, ladies and gentlemen, if you have a percentage here in tab number 1, that will be used as the discount rate to help us calculate present value equivalent. So assuming that our money earns a 5% rate of return for us long-term over time, our immediate need today is 1.6 million. What does this mean? Well, we have 1.6. We've got about 800,000 of that covered with your current insurance. So we're left with an $830,000 deficit. So maybe I'm going to recommend $1 million term insurance policy. Maybe I'm going to recommend an IUL, variable, VUL, whatever. Okay. It's up to you to decide. But you know what I like to do? One of my favorite things to do is I'll come to tab number 1 and I'll look at the income gap years, which is 20 years in this case. And I sometimes like to make this a bit more bite-sized because this can be overwhelming. Because I could say to Neil, listen, Neil, you pass away yesterday, right? You prematurely pass. Your wife would be left with an $830,000 deficit, meaning she'd have to write me a check today for $830,000. I'd have to invest that money, average it at a 5% rate of return. If we could do that, this is going to be fully funded. If she can't do that, let me make this a little bit more bite-sized. Let me show you what this $830,000 is broken out over a 20-year period, which is the 20 years you would have been working. She can't come up with $830,000 immediately. She's going to have to come up with $5,400 a month. So maybe she can get a second job, right? I heard that she's got a Cricut. She was making those amazing sweatshirts for the Eras tour on her Etsy shop. I heard she's making a killing. Maybe she could find another big artist to do that for. I'm obviously being facetious. I'm teasing, okay? But I'll tell you what, she's going to be sitting next to him and she's going to be like, there's no way I would be able to come up with $5,400 a month. None. I'd be working full time. If he did prematurely pass, I'd be caring for our son alone. I'd be caring for his mother alone. There's no way I would be able to do that. Well, I bet you have products and solutions, okay, that could cover this deficit, that have premiums and things that are going to cost a lot lower than $5,400 a month. So what's more important to you? Spend, $2,400 a year on insurance premiums for $1 million term insurance policy, comes out to like $200 a month. Let's just say I'm using fake numbers. Okay. I know it depends on them filling out an application and several variables, right? What's more important to you? Get a plan in place or not do anything. So maybe this is how I'm going to want to illustrate it to them. You know what I like to do once I've checked my math, I've checked my numbers. Sometimes I also like to show people, listen, if you can't save $5,400 every single year, well, then guess what? Maybe each year you increase it by 3%. Well, guess what? If every year for that 20-year period, she would increase her money, then guess what? Rather savings, I should say. She doesn't have to come up with $5,400 to start. She could start with $4,100 a month every month for the first year. Save that into some type of an investment vehicle. We average 5%. The next year she increases that by 3%, saves that every year for year 2. We're investing it 5%. Year 3, she increases it, so on and so forth. Okay. Now, in tab number 2 of every target map, under cash flow sources, you can add a custom hypothetical cash flow here. You can add a custom asset, hypothetical asset here. This does not add that asset onto their asset map report. This just lives in the target map. This is really great where you're maybe trying to show like a hypothetical annuity or a hypothetical asset. Like that's all well and good. I'll show you here though, under insurance, there is no add custom insurance asset. I'm not really sure why, and that's perfectly fine because there's a really easy workaround, and that's what I want to illustrate to you today. To add any type of insurance as a recommendation, you actually have to come back to their physical asset map report and add it here. So all I have to do is right click my mouse from my quick actions menu, okay? Click create, go to insurance, okay? I don't sell, I'm gonna make up a fake account, okay? So I'm gonna call this proposed new term. Help if I could spell today, okay? Proposed new term, put the provider. I won't pick one in case you don't like the one I picked because Lord knows I always tend to pick the one that people don't like, okay? Come in here, say 20 years of coverage, fine, put the policy owner. You know what I like to do anytime I put something hypothetical physically on someone's asset map to like illustrate or point to it? I do tend to click into either the reference name or the location, insurance carrier field, and I'll right click my mouse. If you're on a Windows computer, you can right click your mouse and access emojis. If you're on an Apple, you can double click your keypad. That'll open as well. When you click emoji, you can search for an emoji. Now, everyone that's attended training with me in the past, you're probably sick of me saying this, but we're all business professionals. We're not going to get crazy with the emojis. I like to use colored dots, question marks, like intentional things that don't really like disrupt the conversation, but just bring the eye to it. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll type in like orange and I'll do like an orange dot And the orange dot is just a quick reminder for me, like, hey, I put this hypothetical thing here. I'm going to talk to you about why I did that later on. Okay, so look, I just added a brand new life insurance policy to this asset map. If I go back to the target map percent funded has not changed. People tend to call me in a panic. They're like, it didn't factor it in. Well, of course it's not going to factor it in because you already ran the target map. You added the insurance policy after you ran this target map. So we're not going to automatically check anything on that you add new. From a legal standpoint, like, we cannot do that. What if you specifically built a scenario the way that it should be? We're not going to just be like checking things on. No, you come back to the loss of life target map, go back into tab number 2, scroll down to the bottom. It does flow through. It's just not checked on. Okay. So like when you run a retirement target map and you're like, oh shoot, forgot to add their social security place, like, you know, their social security amounts. Fine. You go add the social security to their asset map. Then you come back to the target map that you've already created, open it up, come back into tab number 2. Then you can check on the social security. Okay. So I can layer this in. And I can test it and I can say, if I add this new policy, is that going to get us to where we want to be? It looks like it will. So you can present this all in one target map if you want. Like, here's if we do nothing. Here's if we do the following. You can do it all in one. How I prefer to do it is I like to create different scenarios. So usually what I'll do is I'll test my situation, my scenarios and everything first. Then when I'm ready, I'll uncheck it and bring it back to the base case. Then I'll scroll to the top and click settings. And from here, I'll rename this. I'll call this loss of life current insurance. Okay, and I'm going to click update. This is where with target maps, I always recommend you build your base case first, whatever it is, education, retirement, disability, long-term care, I don't care. Build your base case first, then use the cloning button. Okay, you can clone a target map from here. When you click clone, it creates a carbon copy of all that hard work you've done. But now in this copy version, we're safe to make variable changes and things to illustrate a different scenario. I can't tell you how many times I've had people that call, they're like, I love target maps, but I get confused because I build my base case and then I change things on the fly with the client and then I can't remember what it was before. I'm like, well, don't do that. Use the clone button because then there's like a little bit of a safety net there, right? Preserve your base case always. When you click into the copy version, this is where I can come in and go to tab number 2, scroll down to the bottom, and I could check on that proposed new term. And then all I have to do is scroll to the top and click the settings button. And I could rename this and I could call this current insurance plus 1 mil proposed new term. Okay, title it whatever you want. You could even like abbreviate some of this. You can like abbreviate current insurance like that. Okay, and I could click update. Look how nice this is though. If I go back to the highest level here, target maps, look how nice this is. And I can drag and drop these to go in a particular order. Okay, this is if we do nothing. This is if we do something. Now you might say to me, well, what if they didn't even ask you to run this? Well, they didn't need to, because guess what? The signal brought to your attention that there was a problem and you owed it to them to go look to see if there truly was a problem. You ran the numbers, there's a problem. But here's together how we're going to fix it. That's really where signals and target maps tie. We do not need permission if something brings to our attention that there could be a problem. We owe it to ourselves if we are approaching and working with clients from a holistic approach. Like they think we're doing this for them anyway. Whether they choose to do anything about it, that is on them, but you're going to sleep a lot better at night knowing that you did your due diligence, right? You told them this was going to be a problem. Now, before we kind of start to wrap up for the day, I want to just remind you of a couple things. You know, having people think about a loss of life is not the most fun scenario, right? Nobody wants to think about losing our loved ones, but I think that there is an importance of stressing to people about having a plan. So whether or not they have plans in place or not, you owe it to yourself to check that the plan is in fact going to work. And if it's not going to work, what are you going to do to fix it? And if they don't have a plan, you should show them what not having a plan will do. Few other areas I like to highlight when just thinking about, you know, getting a plan in order in case something happens to people. Legal instruments is huge. Like, do they have a will in place? Do they have trusts? You may not be the one setting that up, but I think facilitating those conversations or guiding them to people in your network that can assist them, that's going to be huge. I think we all know the importance of making sure beneficiaries are up to date. Don't forget that you can come to the interactive beneficiary report of every household and you can come to the visual view. This is the beneficiary visualization. You can only select one person at a time along the top. It's basically saying if Neil passes away today, here's his primary beneficiaries, here's his contingent. The column you want to pay close attention to is unassigned. Unassigned can bring to light to you that either A, you don't know who some of their beneficiaries are, or B, you forgot to add them, so you'll add those and get those cleaned up, or maybe we need to have a conversation. I'm guilty of this too, okay? I actually have a life insurance policy, and they've been reaching out to me for 2 weeks asking me to make sure that my beneficiaries are up to date, and I've just been slacking on it, right? But that's terrible, because if something did happen to me and I didn't have my beneficiaries set up, like, that would stink, right? It's easy for us to put these things off, but I think it's important for us to stress to clients the importance of getting a plan in place and making sure that everything is in order, because once they do it, then they're going to be set up for success. The other thing to consider is, don't forget that in the relationship section, you can go to the visual option, which is relationship maps. And if you needed to build kind of a custom illustration to show, how things are going to get divided upon someone's passing or something like that, you can build out those custom illustrations here. While assets do not flow through to relationship maps, you can use custom text boxes as placeholders for words or phrases or assets and things like that. And you can kind of move everything around. If you want to learn more about relationship maps, we have a ton of resources available. You can click on the chat bubble here, open up our support options, search for help. You can type in relationship maps, and we've got some resources and things built. Okay. All right, everybody, as we start to wrap up today, you know what I like to do. I always love to engage the group. So I'd like to engage you all by asking you a quick question via the poll. I just want to know, do you love Asset Map? Have you had success with it? And if the answer is yes, would you be willing to leave us an honest review? I think our peers in this industry are looking for technology that's going to help better their clients' experience. And I think Asset Map can help us do that. So if you have interest and you don't mind, and you can take a minute after today's call to fill out a quick survey, I just posted the link in the chat, and I will also provide the link in the email follow-up. So thank you to those of you that said that you'd be willing. And for those that said, I love Asset Map, but I don't want to do a review at this time, that's okay too. Don't worry. Okay. All right. As we wrap up today, in terms of next steps, stay tuned for next month's Accelerate series webinar. Next month's Accelerate is going to be very fun. It's all about Asset Map treasures. We're going to be showcasing some hidden gems and features that often get overlooked that could be game changers for your practice. Might be review for some features, but certainly we'll have at least a few that will be peppered in that you might say, I had no idea you could even do that. That's incredible. These are features that we don't get to commonly talk about on trainings, because some of them, aren't necessarily features that are going to commandeer 45 minutes of training. So we've kind of combining some of these accelerated features together in one webinar. You can sign up for that on our corporate website, and we'll also do some promotions leading up. For those of you that said you'd be willing to leave us an honest review, thank you for that. Lastly, I do want to encourage you all that if you haven't attended our Asset Map virtual bootcamp, you might want to consider. Bootcamp is actually an incredible event that we only offer once a quarter, and our next one is actually coming up July 22nd through 24th. So for those of you on the elite level subscription, Bootcamp actually is included in your subscription. You can come to our combo option, which is all 3 days of Bootcamp at no cost. That's $929 that you're saving. And we host Bootcamp once a quarter. And if you're on the elite subscription, you can come as many times as you want. For those that are not on the elite subscription, you can purchase a ticket. We did end early bird pricing a couple weeks ago, but I did extend it just for the next couple days for those of you on today's call. So if you are on our professional level subscription and you want to purchase a ticket to Bootcamp, I've extended the early bird code to give you 35% off. This is a virtual event. We do record the sessions, and we do make the training recordings available for 30 days post-event. And I'll just put a little reminder here that if you're an elite level subscriber, just reach out to the support team. They'll have to verify your subscription level, and then we will give you the promo code to bypass payment. But I'm sorry, I can't give it to you on today's call because other people will try to use it. So that are not on the elite level subscription. So As we wrap up today, the very last thing I have for you is, would you just be honest and let me know what you thought of today's call? This is more for me, more than anything. If you could just take 2 seconds and fill out the survey, you can either scan the QR code. I just posted the link in the chat. I think it's 2 questions. If you could just tell me that you found value in today's call, it would mean a lot to me, mean a lot to the team. If you have any feedback, please feel free to do that. We do move quickly. I am aware of that. So sometimes I get feedback, oh, it's kind of fast paced. I'm aware, we have a lot of material to cover in a limited amount of time. So other than that, that's all I have for us. Thank you all for your time today. I'm going to take a look at the chat and see if there's any questions here. Oh, great question that came in. How do you rename and clone a target map? Just to reiterate this one more time, we'll go back in app really, really quickly. If you go back into the target map section, you can actually, from this view, double click on the name. If you double click your mouse quickly, that'll allow you to quickly rename and then click off to the side. You can also click the 3 dots here to click edit, to rename, and you can also clone from this view too. If you're in an actual target map, again, you're going to click your settings gear on the upper right to rename, and you're going to click the clone button on the upper right if you want to do that too. So hopefully that's helpful. All right, everyone, I'll stay on for the next 2 minutes or so. If there's any final questions, now is a good time to go ahead and add them into the chat. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time, and I hope to see you at the next one. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Great question just came into the chat. If you use assets to fund a loss of life, those assets are no longer available for a retirement scenario. What if that asset you sold also has a mortgage? Yeah, so interesting concept there. Liabilities actually do not flow through into target map, so we're not even taking that into consideration. So you'd manually have to add the expense to pay off any type of a mortgage. And just remember that all target maps are siloed. They do not speak to one another. So in theory, you could be running a loss of life analysis where you've checked retirement assets, but you could go check those exact same retirement assets as funding sources in a retirement target map. They are 2 completely separate things. So you do kind of have to do your due diligence to make sure you're not like double counting things where, in real life, maybe that wouldn't be the case. But yeah, every target map you run is siloed. None of them speak to one another. It's just a siloed scenario, siloed situation. But that allows flexibility so that if you needed to show multiple scenarios where you're using a mixture of the same accounts, you have the flexibility to do that. My pleasure. Thank you so much for your questions. I really appreciate it. Good question in the chat. Tuesdays and Thursdays, we offer a Signals Target Map training. So this Accelerate Series webinar, I do host this monthly. It's on a different topic, but it's usually every 3rd or 4th Thursday of every month. Usually I say it's usually the 3rd Thursday of every month that I host this webinar, but sometimes a month has like 5 Thursdays, and depending on holidays and stuff, I might like bump it to the 4th. But if you're asking about Tuesday, Thursday training, that's our Signals Target Map training. And I'm going to repost those links in the chat for you right now in case you perhaps like joined after I already shared those. So if you have any interest, it's the same training, just offered 2 separate dates, 2 separate times, so you can pick what works best for you.